Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I still feel the cold of that first night under my skin. I remember pulling out of the station at 1:17 a.m., November 12, 2018. The glow of the overhead lights in the squad room fading behind me as I navigated the tar and gravel road south of Cedar Hollow. My windshield wipers worked in fits and starts, scraping away the last drops of a light rain that left the air sharp and thin. My radio sat silent except for static, long, hissing moments that reminded me how alone I really was out here. When the surveyor's call crackled in, it sounded half lost in the interference. "Deputy Harper," the dispatcher said. "Land surveyor at Old Northern Brickworks Quarry reports possible human remains. He's scared. Wants a cold light investigation." I felt my throat tighten as I reached for the mic. "On my way," I said, voice calm, and flipped on the spotlight. The beam cut a path through the darkness, illuminating roadside weeds tipped with dew. By the time I crested the final rise, I could see the quarry's broken rim walls rising like tombstones against the night sky. No moon, no stars, just the black void above. The surveyor stood at the edge, flashlight in hand, pointing toward a jagged crack in a concrete slab 50 yards out. My boots crunched loose stones as I approached. He swallowed hard every time he spoke, but he managed to explain that his transit prism had hit something solid in the concrete, something that chipped away to bone. I got down on one knee, shining my own beam. A fragment of gray stone fell away, and there it was, white, porous, unmistakable. Knucklebone. My pulse thudded against my ribs. I sealed off the area by radioing for backup. While I waited, I stayed low, eyes scanning the rim wall for any movement. The only sound was the wind hissing through blasted limestone. By sunrise, the coroner and forensics team had unearthed 3 bodies. All adult men, apparently bound and buried alive in freshly poured concrete that had hardened around them. Each slab bore the imprint of struggle. Tiny air pockets around elbows, the ridges of calloused hands frozen in the brittle gray. I kept staring at those imprints, almost convinced I could hear the faint scraping of skin on stone if I listened too long. Over the next few days, I pored over missing persons reports from 2002 to 2006. No matches. Their faces, or what was left of them, didn't ring any bells in our database or the state files. I drove home at dawn, shoulders stiff with tension, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those hollow voids where heads had been, ears pressed flat against the concrete. 3 nights later, I found the envelope on my desk. Plain brown, no return address, just my name in a neat script. Deputy Harper. These were only the first. 10 more are buried beneath Meridian County's quiet. I can't carry this alone. Meet me at Monroe Bridge alone. Captain Alvarez shrugged it off when I mentioned it. Probably a crank, he said. But I couldn't let it go. I knew the landscape too well. There were places no prankster would dare, like the old Monroe Bridge over Silver Creek. At 11 p.m., I rolled up alone, headlights killing every shadow off the road behind me. The bridge was rusted and sagged in the middle, its paint peeled away by years of sun and snow. The creek gurgled below, dark water swallowing my reflection in ripples. I clicked off the engine and stepped onto the deck. My flashlight beam shot out. catching rotten boards and a single flickering street lamp 10 yards away. Under the west abutment, I found it, a weather-beaten Tupperware container wedged beneath loose bricks. Inside was a hand-drawn map of Meridian County, with 10 X's marking sites, an abandoned grain elevator, a long-closed gas station, the collapsed roof of an old farmhouse. Alongside the map, a note read, "I saw you bring backup. I need your word this stays between us. 13 bodies in all. Start south of Ashwood. I'll be watching." I closed the lid and felt a cold thrill of dread sink into my chest. I slid the container into my coat pocket and retraced my steps. Every board groaned underfoot. I half expected whispers or footsteps behind me, but the night held its breath. By dawn the next day, the forensics crew dug beneath the grain elevator. 2 more slabs, a man and a woman, encased the same as the first. I watched them lift the blocks, rectangular shapes that looked impossible to break. Air pockets detailed every wounded limb. When they finally chipped away the concrete, the bodies looked like ghosts pouring out of stone. So began the longest stretch of my career. For 3 weeks I led digs at every hex. Each discovery added to the horror. 9 more victims in total, 5 women, 4 men, buried under barns, in overgrown lots, inside the walls of closed service stations. Never a shot fired. No chases, no struggle beyond that final imprint in the concrete. Just silent graves waiting to be found. Every night I returned to patrol, but the roads didn't look the same. Gravel crunch sounded like bones. Wind rattling through broken farm equipment felt like soft screams. My hands clenched the wheel tighter each time. My radio crackled with mundane calls, disturbing the peace, welfare checks, stray livestock, but I heard only the echoes of concrete slabs cracking beneath hammers. Then the burner phone came. It was taped to my mailbox at home, ringing at midnight. The screen read, "You've found them. Now learn the rest at Dawson's farmhouse." Midnight, alone. I know how reckless it was. Protocol meant SWAT, backup, lights blazing. But the voice on that phone had been my only witness so far. I promised myself I'd end this tonight. I parked in Dawson's overgrown drive at 11:59 p.m. Rain had started again, spitting cold drops against my windshield. I killed my lights and stepped through the tall grass, shotgun at my side, flashlight buzzing to life. The farmhouse loomed, windows dark, its porch sagging like a tired jaw. No movement inside. When I crossed the threshold, the door creaked, echoing in the empty hall. The air smelled of mold and rotted wood. I swept light across the walls. Peeling wallpaper, a fallen chair, footprints and dust. No one called out. I moved room to room until the beam landed on a young woman in the kitchen. She held a stained notebook, knees pulled to her chest. "Marisol?" I said softly. "I'm Deputy Harper." She nodded, voice cracking. I helped. I never meant to, but I was scared. I put the shotgun down on the table and stepped closer, chest tight. She opened the notebook. Pages filled with neat entries. Names, dates, locations. Each name ended when concrete was poured. She traced a finger along the lines, tears gathering. "She was 19 when he started," Marisol whispered. He thought he was cleaning up the county. He'd lure them, drifters, runaways, anyone no one would miss. He kept them alive in that pit, then poured the concrete. She pointed to the penultimate entry, January 12th, 2006. The last killing, day before he died, then blank pages. We sat in silence, listening to the old refrigerator hum. Thunder rolled far off, or maybe it was just my blood pounding against my ears. I lifted the shotgun, but my hands shook. Protocol or not, I knew her words were the key. She led us back to Cole's workshop. where a hidden cellar held rebar and buckets of dried cement. Detective Lights picked out a makeshift mixing pit, stained and cracked. They arrested her at dawn. She pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact. Given her age, cooperation, and remorse, she got 20 years with parole eligibility after 6. 20 fallen bodies wreathing the county, but 19 finally named. I drove patrol again after it closed in 2020, but I'm not the same. Every time I pass fresh concrete, I feel the slab come unbidden to mind, the handprints frozen in horror. My knuckles blanch on the wheel. My radio's static sounds like breathing. Sometimes at night I park in front of a lit porch. I kill the engine and listen. Gravel crunching, wind sighing, the distant hum of a generator. And I ask myself, is that my reflection in the window, or a shape moving just beyond the light? The rain eased by dawn, but the sky stayed low and leaden as I watched the last of the forensics trucks pull out of the gravel lot by the grain elevator. I stayed behind, standing on the cracked concrete pad where we'd pulled 2 more bodies. My breath came in white plumes as I ran a gloved hand over a pitted ragged edge where the slab had cracked. Every imprint of wrist bone and broken finger curl was still visible. For a moment, I wondered if I should have stayed with the bodies in the slab, sliding into that cold concrete myself, just to feel what they felt. Back at the station, the radio chatter felt absurd. Dispatch on a welfare check, a loose dog near Route 14, a drunk at Miller's bar asking if the world would ever get back to normal. The normal world had shattered for me that night in the quarry. I pressed my palm flat against the wood grain of my desk and closed my eyes, trying to remember how it felt when fear came not from steel and rubber but from baked stone and human bone. Those days blurred into a rhythm of digging, reporting, driving patrol, sleeping in fits. Every site on the map felt like a brush with an unseen predator. I'd arrive after midnight under flickering porch lights or broken security lamps, watching for footprints that weren't mine, listening for metal creaking like bones turning in the dark. Once, at a collapsed barn, I found a discarded concrete mixer blade buried in weeds. Its odor still clung, rust, oil, and something else, like old sweat soaked into steel. I called in every half hour, even when there was nothing to report, just to hear a human voice. "Harper here," I'd say, voice low through the handheld mic. Still cold out, no movement. My partner, Deputy Calloway, answered most times. "Copy that. Keep safe." But I could sense his fret through the static. He'd started jogging beside me during night shifts, staying close enough that I heard his boots on gravel, but far enough that I felt the solitude between us. "You okay, man?" he asked once, leaning into the squad car window during a break at dawn. I nodded and stared at my reflection in the glass, eyes hollow, posture stiff. He didn't press further. They closed the quarry entrance with concrete barriers, ironic in its own twisted way. I idled in the car one evening before the barricade went up, thinking about those 3 men entombed under the limestone wall. Their names still unknown. I remembered that surveyor's flashlight quiver, how he'd stepped back as if afraid I might decide to seal him in too. The map led us next to a service station off County Road F. The shell of a building, no sign, just a rusted pump lying on its side. Under a layer of sodden leaves, the slab lay waiting. 2 more bodies, one older, maybe late 50s. Someone who dipped into Brown County lakes every summer, judging by the water calluses on his hands, and one younger, 20s, hair still dark under the broken capstones. Their last moments were smeared into the slab. Elbows pressed flat, fingers clawed into the wet mix before it hardened. Night after night, I patrolled the same roads, half expecting a car to pull out from a side path, headlights slicing through the dark, gun in hand. But no one came. Only wind through broken barns and the occasional deer startled across the road. Still, each creak of a broken sign or rustle of damp cornstalks sent my heart stuttering. The texts began the same night as the farmhouse meeting. Evenings at home were no sanctuary. My phone buzzed with a new message. There's an X at the schoolhouse. Old bus garage, I'm watching. I flipped on the porch light, peered down the dark line of trees, then grabbed my coat and keys. It was after midnight, and the schoolhouse was fenced off, its playground empty and silent. Under the bleachers, I found the mark. Another shallow slab buried beneath decades of grass, 8 more victims. When they lifted those slabs, my flashlight caught the blade of rebar still embedded. No one had removed it. I realized that night the killer had left parts of the murder scene intact, as if he wanted someone to find them someday. A trail of evidence and empty forms, each slab left in place in structures that time had forgotten. He'd created monuments to his work in the quiet places people stopped visiting. I started dreaming of him. One long fever dream where I was digging a hole beneath my wife's childhood home, convinced she was next. In the dream, I'd chip away at the concrete only to see her eyes open wide, her face a rictus of betrayal. I'd wake up in a sweat, the sheets clinging to my skin, listening to my daughter's soft breathing in the next room. Despite the nightmares, I couldn't stop. Each new slab I uncovered felt like a promise I had to keep. A promise to the dead that someone would remember them. To the living that we wouldn't let him bury anyone else. By mid-January, the county had marked 15 bodies. I'd fallen into a strange routine. Patrol until sunrise, head home for a quick shower, coffee, then brief with the state agents. They asked questions about timing, patterns, psychological profiles. I gave them facts and kept my theories to myself. I wasn't trained in profiling. I knew only what it felt like to find a friend's body under a layer of gray. On one cold February night, I pulled up behind a flatbed truck outside the old grain elevator, a county vehicle hauling away debris from the site. I walked toward the driver, flashlight bobbing. "Deputy Harper," I called. He gunned the engine and sped off, headlights blinding me. I ducked back, heart in my throat. I reported the license to dispatch, plate unregistered, truck stolen from a neighboring county. By morning, we had a file on a local contractor with no alibi that night. His name was Cole. Victor Cole. I researched him at the station. No criminal record, family man, contractor who disappeared in 2006 after his wife left him. His property, the farmhouse where Marisol confessed, was abandoned. His trucks and tools sold off after his death, but someone must have kept that flatbed running. Someone was still cleaning up his mess. That night, I found myself parked outside his old workshop, flashlight in hand, a worn leather journal in my coat pocket. Marisol's diary of his kills, hand-scrawled entries I kept thinking might be fiction. But as I slipped past the shattered windows, I saw the cellar door beneath the floorboards. It looked exactly as she'd described. A hidden pit lined with rusted steel, still damp with last night's rain. I climbed down and shone my light around. Empty buckets, stains on the floor, and there, set into the earth, a single concrete form with fresh edges. No markings yet, no bodies pressed frozen inside. My breath hitched. I checked my watch, 1:03 a.m. My pulse thundered as I realized the map lied. There must have been 16 bodies marked. She told me 19, 3 more sites unaccounted for. Sites I hadn't seen. Sites that might still hold living people. Or worst, new slabs waiting to harden around fresh victims. My radio was dead. I was alone in the dirt, staring at fresh concrete. My hands trembled as I reached out to touch it. Cold, rough, and permanent. I ran my fingers over the edges and felt a voice whisper in my head. "Will you stop digging, Deputy Harper, or will you finish what you started?" I stepped back, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to get out. But I knew I couldn't walk away, not now, not ever. I climbed out of that pit, soaked in fear and rainwater, and I drove off before dawn. I called for backup only once, my voice steady, but my fingers shaking on the wheel. They found the empty mold in the spot where I touched it. No prints but mine. Tonight, I'll suit up at 1:17 a.m. I'll head back to the county roads that have become my graveyard. The radar units and cameras and cell pings can't save them now. Only my boots on gravel, flashlight beam cutting through the dark, and the echo of conviction that tells me I'm the only one who can find what remains. And I still don't know where those last 3 sites are. I only know they're out there, in some abandoned silo, behind the walls of a forgotten church, or buried under a new slab of unbroken concrete on a freshly paved road. I know because I touched that fresh form. I know they're waiting for me. So I drive on. The concrete slabs of Meridian County a chain I can't break. Every mile marker feels like a tombstone. Every broken barn light feels like a heartbeat fading into stone. And I keep asking myself, will I ever find them all? Or will I become just another imprint in the gray, stilled forever by my own obsession? I backed out of that pit before dawn, but sleep was impossible. My phone died overnight, so I drove straight back to the station, boots wet and clothes stiff with cold. I tossed my jacket on the locker room bench and stared at my reflection in the metal lockers. Eyes bloodshot, shirt plastered to my back. Captain Alvarez glanced up. "You look like hell," he said. I just nodded, turned away, and headed for the briefing room. By 7 a.m., the state agents were already there. Agent Morales and Special Agent Whitman, sprawled over maps and photographs. Morales looked up. "Deputy Harper, we got your ping. Everything okay?" I clenched and unclenched my fists. "I found the mold," I said quietly. "Fresh concrete. No bodies yet." Whitman's brow furrowed. "You mean another site?" I nodded. "I don't know how many left, but there are 3 unmarked on the map. I saw one last night under cover. We've got to move now." Morales snapped open his notebook. "Show us." I unrolled Marisol's hand-drawn map across the table. The 10 X's were all scratched out. 3 faint circles had no marks. "Those circles," I said, tracing them with a fingertip. "I never dug there. One's just outside Willow Creek Church, another by a grain silo southeast of Ashwood, and a third on Highway 22, new pavement." Whitman frowned. "But that road was repaved last spring. No time to bury anyone now." I shook my head. "That fresh form I touched, still damp last night around 1 a.m. They must be burying in new concrete." Silence settled. Morales checked his watch. "We'll get teams on it, but you need backup, Harper." I looked at the cracked ceiling tile. "I'll go alone," I said, again. They exchanged glances. Finally, Morales sighed. "Fine. But we have choppers on standby. Call us if anything goes south." By midnight, I was rolling toward Willow Creek Church, headlights cutting through fields of corn that swayed in an October breeze. A half moon drifted behind cloud, offering just enough light to see the church steeple. Gravel crunched under my tires as I turned into the rutted parking area. The lot was deserted. No other cars, no lights in the stained glass windows. Radio silent, phone dead again. I grabbed my flashlight, secured my sidearm, and stepped into the night. The old church looked abandoned, peeling paint on the doors, a loose plank rattling on the porch with every gust. My breath came in short bursts as I headed toward the southern wall, where Marisol's map indicated a hollow beneath the foundation. I knelt in the grass, shining the beam across the ground. Something caught the light. An offset in the concrete slab beneath the church's brick veneer. A hairline crack, perfectly straight. Heart thudding, I found a loose corner and pried at it with my gloved fingers. The brick gave way, revealing a narrow cavity. I squeezed myself through and landed on damp earth inside a crawl space. Narrow, musty, and lined with old boards. My flashlight beam danced over stone walls and rotted beams. Through the dust motes, I saw it. A metal mold set into the dirt, its edges sharp and wet with fresh cement. My pulse hammered as I crouched, barely daring to breathe. Reaching into my coat pocket, I pulled out my pocket knife and scraped at the edge. The blade caught on hardened cement. I wedged it deeper, prying a section loose. A clump of gray mix came free, revealing the curved outline of a body inside. I pressed my ear to the mold, half expecting the faint echo of a heartbeat. Anything to remind me this was real. Instead, I heard the faint drip of water somewhere deep in the foundation. I snapped a photo with my radio's accessory camera, hands trembling. Then I stepped back and radioed the station. Deputy Harper found another mold at Willow Creek Church. I need forensics out here now. The reply crackled. Copy, Harper. ETA 5 minutes. I wiped sweat from my brow even though it was cold. My flashlight beam flickered as I scanned the crawl space. Dust settled in the beam, and I caught a flash of movement at the corner of my eye. A thin shape slithering across the support beam. Heart leaping, I swung my light around, but nothing was there. The musty air felt charged, as if something watched me from the darkness. Pulling back, I climbed out and braced myself against the old brick. The mold was safe for now, but I knew state teams would be here soon, prying bodies free, collecting evidence. I just hoped the person still laying fresh forms tonight would stop now that I'd found another. But deep down, I knew better. The killer's shadow stretched farther than any map, darker than any slab. The next site was the grain silo southeast of Ashwood, but first I drove home for a quick shower, trading my wet clothes for dry ones. I didn't sleep, I just stared at my reflection, watched my eyes rimmed red, and whispered to myself, just 2 more. Then I grabbed my jacket and headed back out before dawn. By 3 a.m., I reached the farm road leading to the silo, headlights illuminating a narrow path between corn rows that reached skyward like cathedral pillars. The silo rose above them, a silver cylinder crowned with rusted catwalks. No light anywhere. I parked in the mud and stepped onto the catwalk, flashlight in hand. The metal creaked underfoot. Below, the farmland lay flat in the moonlight. No movement, no sign of anyone. I shone my beam along the silo's base and saw the outline. A fresh seam of concrete cutting a perfect circle in the floor. The grain, once poured here, would have covered it, but the farmer had emptied the silo for repair. That repair must have masked the mold's placement. I climbed down the ladder and knelt beside the seam. Fresh cement, still damp, slick under my glove. I dug with the corner of my knife, breaking the surface to reveal another body form. As I pried, I felt a metallic scratch under my palm. A small nail embedded in the cement. I pulled it free and examined it. Standard 3-inch galvanized, like what a contractor might use. Fingerprints had long since washed away, but it was a clue that Cole, or someone copycatting him, left inadvertently. I bagged it in a glove and radioed in again. Harper, Site 3 confirmed. Grab that nail sample. Forensics will want it. Lightning flickered in the distance. an October storm rolling in. I rubbed my arms, suddenly aware of the wind picking up, rattling the silo's sheets. My heart throbbed, not just from the find, but from something else. The realization that the killer, or his apprentice, was still active. Fresh bodies, fresh forms, fresh nails, burying victims under new concrete, using new construction sites. Someone had learned from the first series of murders and carried on the work. The county turned the church site into a secured scene by morning. State teams arrived to find me standing in the wreckage of the silo outline, rain starting to dot the concrete. I gave them the nail, showed them the seam, then watched them hammer and chisel until they uncovered the body. A man in his 30s, hands knotted before the pour. The imprint of his struggle was clear. Fingers clawed at air pockets, wrists hyperextended. As they worked, I backed away, slipping into my car without a word. I watched the scene from the edge of the cornfield, the silo looming behind a flurry of forensic lights. The sky cracked with thunder as the rain began in earnest, drumming on the hood of my cruiser. I stared at the silo, numb, waiting for the flash of headlights that would herald backup or agents arriving. But there was no flash, no footsteps behind me, only the storm and the echo of my own breath. I realized something sickening. Finding the mold didn't stop the killer. It only confirmed they were one step ahead. 3 sites left. 3 molds may hide 3 living forms or more bodies. All I knew for sure was that time was running out, and I was running on empty. I drove off into the downpour, windshield wipers slashing water, head low against the glass. My reflection stared back. Bone-deep exhaustion, eyes glinting with the weight of all I'd seen and all I'd yet to find. And I knew, as a final bolt of lightning lit the highway, that even if I uncovered every slab, even if I named every victim, the darkness would remain, solid as concrete, cold as stone, and endless as the night. I pulled onto Highway 22 just past 2 a.m., the yellow lines reflected in my headlights like warning stripes across the wet asphalt. Rain had begun again, steady now, a low drumbeat on the roof of my cruiser. My breath fogged the inside of the windshield as I stared at the freshly paved road ahead. I knew this stretch had only been repaved in late August. The steam still rose from the seams where the new concrete met the old. It was perfect cover for a mold still wet enough to press my fingers into. I killed the engine and stepped out, closing the door softly against the rain. The air bit into my cheeks. With my flashlight angled low, I scanned the shoulder. The bitumen dipped into a grassy verge, then rose to the field beyond. No traffic, no distant lights. Only a single farmhouse set back a quarter mile, its porch light extinguished. I kept my radio clipped but silent, knowing there could be no chatter if I was to catch this killer in the act, or at least find the evidence before dawn. Boots still wet, I walked the length of the repaved section, flashlight beam licking over fresh gravel and neat tar edges. My mind replayed Marisol's confession, Victor's journal entries, the imprint of bone and stone. I wanted to believe those days of violent discovery were over, but I remembered the nail in the silo mold, the damp concrete under the church, the grit of fresh form beneath my glove. That thumb-sized seam in the pavement was my last unturned stone. I reached the midpoint of the repaving and crouched beside a narrow inlet where the new road dipped over a culvert. The rainwater pooled there, murky and swirling. I swept my beam across the seam in the concrete barrier that edged the culvert. There, just at the lip, was a hairline crack, angled just enough to suggest it wasn't from machinery stress. I knelt and slid my knife beneath the edge, prying gently. Concrete dust sifted under my glove as the blade scraped deeper. Something gave. A wedge of fresh cement tilted free, revealing an angled cavity beneath. My heart thudded so loud I worried it would alert someone, or something, to my presence. I used my flashlight to peer inside. Smooth interior walls, still glossy with moisture. I touched the lip with a fingertip. It was cold, slick, and unmistakably new. I pressed my other hand to the seal and felt a faint vibration, like the thump of a heart too tired to beat properly. I pressed my ear to the opening, half hoping to hear a soft groan, a plea, a shifting of limbs. But there was only the hiss of rainwater at the culvert's edge. My breath caught. I backed away, pulling out the forensic evidence baggie from my pocket and slipping the cement fragment inside. I sealed it and marked the spot with a small chalk X on the barrier. Already, my flashlight beam trembled in my hand, not from cold, but from adrenaline coiling in my chest. The rain turned heavier. Sheets of water cascaded off the road. I had to call it in. Fumbling with my radio mic, I keyed the button. Dispatch 4 Alpha. I've located another mold, fresh, beneath the culvert on Highway 22. Coordinates coming now. I read off the latitude and longitude. I'm safe. Forensics units en route. Static crackled. Copy, Deputy Harper. ETA 10 minutes. Hold position. Holding position meant crouching in the rain, leaning against that barrier as cars barreled over me in the darkness, though I saw none. The isolation enveloped me. Nothing but the river's roar below, the rain's pulse, and my own ragged breathing. I reached inside my coat and found the leather journal Marisol had given me. I thumbed the pages. Each entry a name, a date, a slab already discovered. Then blank lines where the last 3 should have been. Victor's handwriting had stopped in January 2006, as if he knew no one would ever find them. But someone had. Someone who carried on. Thunder rolled, and the barrier lit by a passing truck's headlights revealed wet imprints around the crack's edge. Boot tread, size 11, a men's work boot. I stared at the pattern. It was a domestic sole, not military or tactical. I pressed my flashlight over it again. The boot had lingered long enough for rain to pool inside the tread before washing outward. Whoever had placed that mold had done it in the hour before midnight. In that moment I felt him watching, Victor's ghost or someone new I couldn't tell. Yet I felt an undeniable proximity, as if the killer crouched in the field beyond, studying my light, counting my breaths. I tightened my fingers around the radio, but before I could speak, something shifted behind me. A soft scrape against the barrier. My flashlight spun, beam stabbing the darkness, but nothing moved. No silhouette, no reflection in car mirrors. Just rain and night. I exhaled, trying to steady my racing heart. Forensics would be here soon, uncovering the body inside the mold. But did I really want to see another victim pressed into stone? That question hammered me as thunder cracked overhead. I shook my head, stuffed the journal into my coat, and rose. I didn't rush, never rush on these scenes, but I walked to my cruiser with deliberate steps, flashlight low, senses reeling. I settled into the driver's seat, soaked through, and cranked the heater. Steam billowed from the vents. My boots dripped onto the mat as I removed my gloves and examined my hands. They were shaking so badly I couldn't hold the radio. The barrier's X marked the final spot. The 10th mold's contents would soon be exposed. Only 2 sites left. Places I'd map out late last night by torchlight. A vacant church basement and the backfield of Dawson's farmhouse. I thought of my family. How the kids would sleep peacefully at home, unaware of the stone-cold graves scattered across their world. How my wife might pour coffee in the morning, expecting me back before dawn, and how I'd be somewhere in this county, prying open another concrete tomb, digging out another soul. My chest tightened. I shut off the engine and stepped out again, this time heading south toward the next X. The rain hadn't let up. Water slicked the road. My headlights carved twin paths through the gloom. I reached the vacant church just as the first sliver of gray light crested the horizon. My flashlight was a secondary beam, now barely needed to find the cellar hatch beside the altar. My hands closed over the rusted handle. I swallowed, forcing calm. This was the penultimate site. 2 molds left in Victor's, or his disciples' secret atlas. 2 more lives trapped in stone. I slid into the cellar, knees splashing in ankle-deep water. A broken pew lay to one side. Stalactites of mold hung from the ceiling's wooden joists. My beam played over damp bricks until it found the form. A rectangular mold set into the dirt floor, its edges wet and gleaming. I knelt and ran my fingers through the cement seam, finding the crack I'd later pry. And as I pressed the tip of my knife between the panels, I felt something else press back. A chill that wasn't the air, a presence that felt alive in the darkness. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to walk away and never look back, but I had promised those victims I'd finish what I started. I twisted the knife, pried the mold open, and the last light of night snaked into the opening, illuminating fingers pressed flat against the interior wall. The imprint was unmistakable. Wide hands, knuckles bent, a final agonized reach. And I knew then, more certainly than ever, that these were the last slabs Victor had poured. Only someone, something, could keep this nightmare alive beyond his death. Sirens sounded in the distance, forensics teams arriving. But in that dripping cellar, I was alone with those frozen hands and the echo of desperation. I closed the mold gently, sealing the image in darkness once more. I stood, turned off my flashlight and climbed back towards sunrise, my face numb, my soul raw. As I emerged, I glanced back at the church's broken doors, the world shifting from night to dawn. I knew there was only one slab left, the farmhouse field where it all began, and where it must end. 2 sites left, then the final encounter I dreaded most. I lit a cigarette, inhaled the acrid smoke, and exhaled into the growing light, knowing that by nightfall I'd face Victor's greatest legacy, the final mold containing the body, not of a victim, but perhaps of the killer himself, or worse, a confession still waiting to break free. I drove the county roads until sunlight bled into the edges of the sky, but I didn't stop. My mind replayed every slab I'd pried open. Trace evidence under fingernails. The howl of jackhammers at dawn, the hard edge of concrete against bone. By mid-afternoon I was back at the entrance to Dawson's farm, the place where I'd first met Marisol Quinn and where Victor Cole had kept his worst secrets. A faded, no trespassing sign swung on a single hinge, and the gravel drive was overgrown with weeds waist-high, like grass choking out the world. I killed the cruiser's engine and sat a moment, listening to my own breathing. The September air was hot, sticky, and the humidity felt like oil on my skin. I slipped off my jacket, stained, soaked through, and draped it over the passenger seat. In my pocket was a worn leather journal, Victor's own handwriting, and 2 plastic bags containing cement fragments and that single nail. Oh, blood tested negative for DNA. I'd need prints on his diary pages. I knew evidence alone wouldn't bring closure. I had to face that field where it all began, where 19 people had been buried alive, and where, according to Marisol, one final mold had been prepared before his death. I should have called for backup. I should have set up lights and cameras. Instead, I grabbed my flashlight, my pistol still holstered, and stepped into the tall grass lining the drive. The farmhouse stood 200 yards ahead, sagging under the weight of rot. Broken window panes, collapsed porch boards, and the hulk of a rusted tractor half swallowed by weeds. The place looked abandoned, reclaimed by nature and time. But I knew better. Beneath this silent ruin lay the last body form that would finish his morbid tally, or expose something even darker. At the tree line, I found the entrance to the field, iron fence posts poking above the grass, barbed wire long fallen. My boots sank into damp earth. Fallen leaves and stalks from last season's corn lay scattered. I clicked on my flashlight, the beam cutting a narrow path ahead, illuminating ragged tufts of grass brushed gold by the setting sun. My radio lay silent in the grass behind me. It was dead again and wouldn't light until I was well inside the field. No signal. My pulse drummed in my ears as I trod deeper. The air smelled of decaying wood and fertilizer. Every step kicked up bits of concrete gray flecks still clinging to the soles of my boots from previous digs. Their sight tightened something in my chest I couldn't name. I reached the center of the field, where the soil dipped slightly, like a shallow depression carved by heavy equipment long ago. I knelt and brushed away layers of brittle grass and dirt. There it was, the edges of a rectangular slab peeking through the earth, seams, not yet, blended into the soil. I dropped to one knee, flashlight trained on the perimeter. Fresh cement still damp enough that grass blades clung to the edges, and the outline of a mold exactly like all the others, only larger. I ran my glove over the seam, cool, coarse, and firm. I pressed my ear to the crack. Silence. No distant drip of water, no heartbeat from within. But the earth around it hummed, a low thrum that might have been my own pounding heart or a distant tractor already near. I pulled my knife, wedged it between the mold's panels. The metal scraped as I forced it deeper. The mold shifted, a crack ran along the center, then popped open to reveal the shape inside. My flashlight beam touched the interior and froze. Not a body, but empty space. The cavity was hollow, no stiff form, no imprint of struggle. Just the dusty echoes of mortar brushed off by the wind. I crouched lower, peering into the depths. No human remains, only the faint swirl of loose earth at the bottom. I blinked, thinking I'd made a mistake. I'd pried slabs from quarries, barns, elevators. Everywhere there had been someone trapped inside, screaming beneath stone. This one was empty. I ran a gloved hand along the interior wall. It was slick on one side, scraped raw on the other. Finger grooves wide and shallow, as if something larger than a man's hand had pressed against it. Not bones, but wide indents. I leaned in closer. A groove too long to be a human arm, a hand too broad to belong to any victim I'd known. Something had formed the mold. But what? A low rumble rolled across the field. My flashlight danced as wind kicked up. The grass bowed in waves. I stood quickly, heart pounding so hard I heard the beating over the rain. No rain today, just the wind. My breath came in short bursts. I circled the mold, looking for footprints or drag marks. There were none. Only the barrier of grass pressed flat against the mold's base, as if something had emerged and retreated without leaving a trace. The radio crackled suddenly, a single burst of static that cut off. I tried to key the mic, but nothing. The sky dimmed, dusk giving way to night. The farmhouse windows glowed faintly, though the breakers had been off for years. My flashlight bounced toward the house. I didn't want to go back, but I needed confirmation. Was the field's mold untouched, or was there more evidence hiding in the shadows? I approached the farmhouse's side door. It sagged on its hinges. I nudged it open with my boot. Inside, the air was thick with mold and rot. My beam swept over empty rooms. A rotting mattress, a broken dresser, stacks of dusty newspapers. I headed toward the back wall where Marisol said they kept the last mixing pit. If the field mold was empty, maybe the body had never been laid to rest outdoors. Maybe it was inside. I found the trapdoor under a rotted rug in the kitchen corner. It creaked as I lifted it, then swung free onto the dusty floor. Below was a cellar, lit only by the dying glow of rusted bulbs hanging from the ceiling. The beam of my flashlight followed the wall to a second mold lying on its side, propped against a concrete post. I stooped, running a finger across its edges. Fresh cement clung to one corner. I looked up. The cellar walls were lined with sketches and scribbles in Victor's handwriting, maps of sites, notes on dates, and one phrase scrawled over and over: "They will not be forgotten." A sudden cough echoed behind me. My beam snapped around. In the far corner stood a figure, shadowed by my own light. Tall but hunched, wearing heavy work boots caked in mud. The breathing was ragged, not my own. My hand went to my holster. "Police, step into the light," I said, voice steadier than I felt. No response. The shape shifted, stepping forward with one arm outstretched. I raised my flashlight. Its beam caught a hand, broad, with fingers too long. The flesh was pale, soaked in sweat or maybe rain. The nails were chipped, stained gray. The figure stepped again, and I saw its face. Blank eyes sunk deep, skin stretched tight, expressionless. Its mouth opened in a silent gape. I fired once. The shot cracked the silence, wood splintering where the figure had stood. It staggered, then collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud. My flashlight skittered as I spun back. The figure lay still, chest unmoving. I kicked at its boot. It thudded hollow like empty leather. The body had no weight, no substance. Dread coiled in my gut as I realized there was no victim here, no assailant to arrest. Only an echo, a hollow mockery of flesh. The cellar plunged into darkness as the dying bulbs flickered and went out. The hair on my neck rose. I backed toward the ladder, my pistol still trained on the shapeless form at my feet. Behind me, a soft scraping began, like fingernails edging along wood. The trapdoor above creaked closed. I leapt, hauling myself out as fast as I could, slamming the door shut. My flashlight beam flared across the kitchen, then back to the field mold through the side window. The earth had sealed itself. The grass lay unbroken across the seam. I stumbled to the door and burst outside, back into the field that now held no evidence of a body or a murderer. The mold lay empty in the dark. No footprints crossed the grass. The farmhouse windows went black. The wind fell silent, as if holding its breath for what would come next. I ran to my cruiser, hands shaking so badly I fumbled the key. I saw the leather journal in my pocket, its pages fluttering. I opened it to the last entry, blank. No map, no notes, nothing to tell me where to look next. The emptiness was worse than any corpse, a void of meaning. I backed onto the grass, tires spinning mud, and pressed the radio mic. Static, not even that. My breath rattled in my chest. I raised my eyes to the farmhouse, the field, the sky where clouds scudded overhead. No answers, no closure, only darkness stretching beyond the horizon, just like the concrete slabs that still cradled 19 mysteries. And in that moment, I understood. The real killer had never been Victor Cole. It was the quiet, hollow absence he left behind, the emptiness of concrete molds without bodies, the trace of a presence so fleeting it could pass unseen. Something older than Cole, colder than death, using his work as a conduit to remind us that some horrors aren't born of flesh and blood. They're born of the void itself. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles whitening, and slammed it into gear. The engine roared, tires spun, and I sped away. Behind me, the farmhouse and mold vanished into the night. Ahead, the highway lights beckoned. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to put as much distance between me and that hollow field as possible. But I couldn't leave it entirely. A voice whispered in my mind, carried on the wind. "They will not be forgotten." I knew it wasn't Victor's journal speaking. It was the silence in the molds, the empty spaces waiting for something to fill them. And I realized, no matter how far I drove, no matter how many nights I spent patrolling silent roads, that hollow echo would follow me, seeking a place to rest, or perhaps seeking me. I roll off the highway onto County Road 14, just past the mile marker, and hit the windshield wipers. They squeak against the glass, pushing the snow aside in quick, ragged strokes. My breath fogs the inside of the cruiser, and I crack the window a fraction, letting in the cold air that stings my lungs. The heater's on full blast, but it can't warm more than the immediate cabin around me. Outside, the world is buried under a fresh foot of snow, and the moon is hidden behind a bank of clouds. Midnight weighs heavy on the night, and every sound seems swallowed before it can reach me. Dispatch pinged 20 minutes ago. Possible stranded vehicle, they said. Reporter was a passing semi-truck driver. Plate traced to a local mechanic named Curtis Dane. No missing person report on file. But with roads slick under the freezing spray, I can't ignore it. I flick on my light bar, just the alley lights up top, and head down the narrow lane. Gravel crunches under my tires. My headlamp cuts a pale tunnel through the swirling snow. The beams reflect off ice crystals, throwing shards of light back at me. I grip the wheel tight, knuckles white in the glow. When I find the sedan, its driver's side door yawns wide. Inside, the upholstery is damp, salt crusted on the floor mats. No sign of Curtis. I radio in, plate and location. Unit 12 at the scene. 1 blue Chevy Malibu, license 4 DGY 732. Door open, no driver in sight. Running lights on. I pause, scanning the tree line. The headlights from the cruiser carve out the hoods of pines lining the road, shadows throbbing in time with my heartbeat. The only answer is wind whistling through broken branches. I step out into the cold and close the door behind me. The metal handle bites into my glove as frost collects on it. My boots sink into the powder. With each footstep, I hear the compressed hiss of snow giving way. I carry my flashlight in one hand, service weapon in the other. My radio crackles with static. Unit 12, backup en route. ETA could be 30 minutes with weather. I acknowledge but say nothing. I know too well that I won't wait. I yank the throw bag from the cruiser's back seat, my old army blanket stitched inside, and drape it over my shoulders. It does little to keep out the cold. A trail of footprints leads away from the car and angles into the woods. One set, deep and irregular, as though the person is limping. I follow it, my boots kicking up snow in dull thumps. The wind pushes wisps of sleet into my face. My breath clouds and vanishes. Every tree branch seems to lean in, heavy with white. I check my flashlight. Full beam out to 15 yards, but hazy beyond. The night feels alive, watching. My pulse throbs in my ears. I press on. The tracks end at the edge of a barn foundation. Stone walls half fallen. Behind it, a cluster of weatherboard sheds in various states of collapse. I slip into the lee of one shed. My flashlight picks out the rust-red smear on the broken wood door. Dried blood. My grip tightens on the light, and my gun hand rests on the grip. I crouch and shine the beam inside. Nothing but empty cans and rusted tools. I step forward, boots crunching over debris. My breath catches when I see footprints crossing the floor. Barefoot prints, smaller than mine, leading deeper. Something in the prints tells me this place has been trampled repeatedly, not just tonight. I radio dispatch again. Unit 12, possible blood inside the barn at 47. Send EMS and crime scene whenever you can. I scan the forest beyond the shed. The pines sway in the wind, needles rattling like distant rain. My skin itches. I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong beyond the obvious. This place should be empty. The old lock farm hasn't been occupied in nearly a decade. Nobody lives this far back. And yet, I step out into the open, heading toward the main barn. The foundation stones give way to 10-foot planks of aged wood. A single window is intact near the center, its glass opaque with grime and frost. A weak beam of pale moonlight filters through. I slow my breathing, trying to listen. Only the wind and the faint hum of my engine halfway down the road. I approach the door, which stands ajar. Wood groans as I shove it wider. Inside, the air is dank and cold. It smells of old hay and rot. Something metallic lingers underneath, like iron on concrete. I sweep the flashlight around. Stacks of hay bales line one wall. On the other wall, I spot shapes hanging from nails, oilskins or tarps draped over forms. I step closer, heart thumping. The beam reveals a man's winter coat, hood up, shoulders hunched. Beneath the tarp, the shape of a body draped over a bale, arms folded. I swallow, mouth dry. "Curtis Dane?" I call out. My voice echoes hollow. No answer. I let the light fall on the floor. Footprints surround the tarp, prints not mine, smaller. My gut twists. I edge forward and lift a corner of the tarpaulin. Inside, a pair of boots, sloppy, caked with mud and snow. Then I see his face, pale, eyes closed, not breathing. His head lolls forward. I stumble back, heart racing. His blood is splashed on the hay beneath him. The pattern is odd, almost neat, deliberate. Someone took time to leave him here. That blood smell deepens in my nostrils. I kneel beside him, his coat's soaked through. I check for a pulse, nothing. I sit back on my heels hard enough to jar my ribs. My vision blurs for a moment. I suck in a breath. Dispatch, Unit 12. Subject is deceased. Nature and cause unknown. Request homicide unit and EMS. My call comes out flat. I rub my face with my glove, pressing the freezing fabric to my cheek. The barn door creaks behind me. I spin, gun raised, breath catching. Nothing but empty space and snow drifting in through cracks. The light glints on something in the far corner. An old radio tuned to patrol frequencies. Speaker crackling static. I step toward it, boots sliding on loose hay. The static resolves into a voice, my own, from a week ago. A routine dispatch about a stolen ATV found near Lake Harmony. This radio can't be mine. I didn't leave it here. I shine my light on the control knobs. They're set to volume high, channel 15. The voice repeats over and over, mixed with static. A floorboard behind me groans. My muscles tighten. I spin, flashlight slicing the darkness. My heart hammers, each beat thundering in my ears louder than the wind outside. I sweep the beam in a slow circle. Every shadow flickers. I take a breath and force myself to speak. "Show yourself," I say, voice low. "Now." Silence greets me. My chest heaves. I glimpse movement out the broken window, something flitting between trees. I can't tell if it's animal or human. My teeth chatter, but from the cold or fear, I can't say. The radio crackles again, louder this time. A second voice beneath the static, softer, mocking. "Nice catch, deputy." The voice is familiar, cordial but dripping contempt. I swallow and step forward, gun hand steady. "Who's there?" The voice laughs, a dry rasp. The doors behind me slam shut. The room goes dark but for my one lamp. The tarp over Curtis shifts slightly, as though stirred by a breeze that isn't there. I don't dare move. I can't turn my back. The voice floats again. Been watching you all this time. It's not my voice, somebody else's, someone who knows me. Someone who knows where to find me. My heart pounds so hard I can hear it in my ears. I force my legs to move, palm sweating on the revolver grip. I advance on the tarp. The light trembles in my hand. Tiny hot spot on the snow outside leaks through a crack in the boards, painting the floor in shifting white and gray. I close in, each step stiff with tension. The voice returns, closer now. Welcome home, Deputy Brooks. The name cuts through me like ice. I freeze, realization dawning. I kneel, gun still trained on the tarp. The cold presses in around me, and I realize this is no accident. This is a trap. And somewhere in the dark, he's watching. I hit the shoulder light on top of the cruiser and ease out onto the snow-packed lane. The beam cuts through the pre-dawn gloom, painting the trees in shifting patterns of white and black. My name's Deputy Brooks, Sunnyside County, and tonight I'm alone on a stretch of County Road 14, where nobody's set foot in weeks. The radio's silent, but for my own breathing and the distant static of dispatch, reminding me backup's at least 30 minutes out. I'm already cold to the bone. Wind stings through the cuffs of my jacket and settles in my spine, but I can't turn back. The Chevy Malibu sits half buried in a drift, lights still aglow. License plates match a missing person file. Curtis Dane, local mechanic, reported absent by his wife 2 days prior. No alarm, no witnesses, just disappearing into the winter night. Their calls to his phone went straight to voicemail, so she flagged him missing. And here I am. I step out, boots crunching the fresh snow underfoot, and grab my flashlight. Air rushes into my chest, icy and sharp. The crunch echoes more pronounced in the hush. I approach the car. Footprints lead off into the woods. A single set, uneven, like someone dragging a wounded leg. My radio crackles. Unit 12, backup en route. 30 minutes out. I press the mic, no one to hear but me. Copy that, I say into the empty night. Last thing I need is to wait for someone else. I wrap my shoulders tighter against the wind and follow the prints, tracking each footfall with the beam. Trees lean overhead, heavy with snow, branches creaking. My pulse throbs in my ears. I think of Curtis's wife, waiting at home, frantic, clinging to hope. Each step feels like a vow. I won't leave empty-handed. The prints end at a crumbling stone foundation, remnants of the old lock barn. I duck beneath a fallen beam and shine the light inside. Stacks of hay bales sit in neat rows, but one corner is stained dark. Rust red smears on broken wood. My breath hitches. I step closer past debris, rusted tools, shattered glass, and the air turns colder, fouler, like something died here. My gloved hand slides to my holster. Heart hammering, I push through a gap into the main stall. Inside, the beam reveals shapes draped in tarps. I sweep across until I spot a lean form against the far wall. I stride closer, barrel of my weapon skimming the tarp's edge. Under it, boots, worn leather caked in mud. I lift the corner. Curtis's face stares up, eyes open and blank. Blood seeps through hay beneath him, pooling in slushy patches. I swallow, chest tightening, no pulse. My knees ache as I nearly buckle. For a moment, I taste bile. I back away, training my light on the floor. Prints circle Curtis's body, barefoot, small, too precise. Whoever did this left signs. My radio lights up. Dispatch Unit 12. Voice filtered through snow. Subject down in lock barn, no signs of life. blood present. Request CSI and EMS. The reply is static. I squat and pull my breath into my throat, trying to calm nerves that won't still. The barn door behind me creaks. I don't turn. I point the flashlight over my shoulder. Nothing but drifting snow against broken boards. Then the overhead light flickers. One stray bulb I didn't see before. It sputters behind me, weak and yellow. I spin fully. The bulb hangs above a makeshift altar carved into the hay. Tools arranged in a semicircle. Small items, photographs, tacked to the barn wall. I step closer, flashlight trembling, and see pictures of me. Brooks at the station. Brooks on patrol. Brooks loading paperwork at his desk. Some prints have red circles drawn around my face. Others display local residents, neighbors I know by name. Beneath them, a crudely drawn map of Sunnyside County, marked with dates and times, all pointing here. My breathing quickens, pulse races. I drop to one knee to examine the map. It calls out locations of other missing person cases, people vanished in remote spots. Each day, each disappearance logged neatly in red ink. My reflection swims in the flashlight's beam. I stand, stepping back until I bump into a wooden post. The beam sweeps up to reveal footprints leading toward the eastern door. I follow, weapon raised, every fiber screaming to run, but training driving me forward. Outside, the wind has picked up, howling like an animal. I grip the map tightly in one hand, flashlight in the other. The footprints vanish into the tree line beyond the barn. I squint through the swirling snow. The forest seems alive. Branches creak like fingers drumming. Shadows shift as if watching. My boots sink with each step. I keep low, arms trembling, scanning for movement. A radio crackle behind me makes me jump, but it's only static. Still, something about that hiss unsettles me, like voices just beyond understanding. I flick off my flashlight and stand in darkness, letting my eyes adjust. Nothing. I click it back on. The beam catches something glinting in the root tangle. A small pocket knife engraved with my badge number. Confusion and fury burn inside me. Who planted this? And why watch me? I slip the knife into my pocket and turn to leave, careful to step over Curtis's body. Then I hear it, soft footsteps crunching in the hay behind me. I freeze, stiff as a statue. The footsteps stop, my heart thunders. I raise my light slowly. The beam lands on a figure standing against the far wall. A man wearing oilskins, face hidden by shadow. He's tall, broad-shouldered, unmoving. Something in his stance reminds me painfully of Deputy Reed, the man I arrested for brutality 2 years ago. I call out, voice steady but low. "Show yourself." No reply. I inch forward, flashlight shaking. The figure's head tilts. A faint laugh, cold and amused, echoes. I step in, foot catching hay, sending it skittering. The figure steps out of darkness. Face pale, eyes gleaming. It's not Reed, but someone who wears pain and hate like armor. He raises a hand slowly, palm open. In it, a photograph. Me comforting Curtis's wife on a previous call, her grief raw. I stare. He flicks the photo at me. It lands at my feet. The wind roars behind him, but I keep my light trained. His lips curve into a smirk. He tilts his head, long coat flapping. Then he steps back into darkness. The barn door slams behind him, sending a gust of freezing air that snuffs out my lamp. I'm plunged into silence and black. My radio squeals, distant sirens howling through static. Something unseen brushes past me and I feel breath at the back of my neck. Cold, deliberate. My finger hovers on the trigger as I rotate slowly, breath ragged. "Stop right there!" I yell into the black. Only my words answer, swallowed by the storm. I reach down and pick up the photograph. My own face, sorrow-stricken beside Curtis's widow. The edges are wet with snow. I press my cheek against it. A click echoes. I spin, revolver raised. The figure stands in the doorway, silhouette backlit by my cruiser's headlights. He steps forward, slow. I track him, knuckles white. He lifts a hand and points west, toward the old Morrison place where Curtis vanished. Then he turns and disappears into the night. A moment later, headlights sweep across the tree line. Backup, finally arriving. I lower my weapon, sliding the photo into my coat pocket. I take a breath, but it catches in my throat. Something about that smirk, something about the photograph, feels like a promise. The newcomers bundle out of their cars, flashlights bobbing. They find Curtis's body, the altar, and the pictures on the wall. They call it a crime scene. I call it a trap. And as I watch them work, I wonder who's really hunting. Because this wasn't about Curtis Dane, it was about me. And whoever set it up isn't done. Not by a long shot. I ease the cruiser off the highway onto County Road 14, feel the tires crunch through the loose gravel buried under a fresh inch of snow. My name's Deputy Marcus Brooks, Sunnyside County, and I've been at this long enough to know that a call after midnight out here almost never ends well. The streetlight at the turnoff died years ago. Now it's just me and the dull glow of my dash panel pushing back the dark. The heater's on high, but it can't warm more than the small pocket around me. Through the windshield, the road vanishes into a wall of pines and pitch-black sky. Dispatch's last transmission fizzles out in the static. Unit 12, possible stranded vehicle at mile marker 14. No reports of missing persons. Plate returns to a Curtis Dane of Mill Creek. Mill Creek's 18 miles south. I half smile at the irony. More often than not, these stranded vehicles turn out as homicides or traps. I flick on the alley lights, then my spotlight, and slide out onto the road. My boots sink into the snow as I climb out, and the wind slams against my chest, knocking the breath from my lungs. I yank the throw blanket from the back seat and wrap it around my shoulders. It's heavy with memories. Old Army-issue gear I refused to part with. But even it can't block the ice. I pause at the cruiser's driver door and radio in plate and location. My voice sounds flat in my own ears. Unit 12 at the scene. 1 blue Chevy Malibu. License 4 DGY 732. Running lights active, driver's side door open. No occupant in immediate vicinity. I close the door behind me. The snow falls in thick flakes, settling on my shoulders like dead leaves. The beam of my flashlight creeps across the hood of the sedan, illuminating the crusted salt on its windshield. I step forward, crunch, toward the open door. Inside, the floor mats are damp, salt caked around the pedals, but no footprints lead back to the cruiser. It's as though someone climbed out and vanished into the forest. A single set of prints trails away from the car, angles into the woods south of the road. The track is uneven, the stride ragged, like the man was limping. I grip my maglite with one hand, keep my revolver at the ready with the other. I swallow hard, my throat's dry from the cold. Each breath is a plume of steam that swirls in the beam. I step off the gravel onto the powdery snow. My radio crackles through the night. Unit 12, backup en route. ETA 30 minutes. I don't hesitate. If someone's out there injured, I'll find him on my own. The footprint trail leads into a stand of young pines, branches weighted with frost. My boots sink ankle deep. Each step feels uncertain. The wind whispers through the treetops, branches scraping like fingernails across a chalkboard. The forest seems alive, watching. My pulse thumps in time with the echo of my heartbeats in my skull. I slow my breathing, focusing on the beam's reach. 10 feet, maybe 20 before the snow swallows it. I force my eyes past the next trunk, then the next, until I see the dark outline of the old lock barn. Its weathered boards half collapsed around a stone foundation. I duck under a fallen crossbeam, flashlight bobbing. The air here stinks of rot and old hay, bitter and sharp. I move toward the barn door, which hangs open a crack. I whisper into the darkness. "Curtis? Curtis Dane, this is Sunnyside County. Deputy Brooks. If you're hurt, answer me." My words trail off into empty space. No response. My boot scuffs the threshold. The door creaks in reply. Inside, the floor is uneven. Hay, broken planks, rusted tools scattered about. I sweep the beam across the far wall and catch sight of dark streaks. Blood, I realize with a cold pit in my gut. I step closer, gun hand tightening. To my left, stacks of hay bales form a crude barricade. To my right, I see the shape of a tarp draped over something large. I inch forward, flashlight trembling. My headlamp clicks on, its battery nearly dead, and I press it to my forehead. The second light turns the gloom into shifting ink shadows. I study the tarp. Rust spots show through, seeping into the yellowed fabric. I swallow and hook a finger under the edge, pulling it aside. Beneath lies Curtis Dane, face pale, eyes closed. His coat is soaked through and matted with dark red. I drop to one knee, check for a pulse. Nothing but a faint tremor in his chest. I press my ear to his mouth, no breath. I sit back hard on my heels, breath echoing in my ribs. My revolver slips from its holster as I recoil. I catch it before it hits the floor, hand shaking. I press my back against the rafter. The barn's single bare bulb flickers overhead, and radio dispatch again. Unit 12. Subject is deceased. Blood loss. Possible foul play. Request homicide and EMS. My voice sounds distant, as if it's coming from underwater. There's a moment of static, then the crackle. 10-4, Unit 12. All units are tied up. Proceed with caution. I close my eyes for a second, picturing Dane's face. Eyes wide when he climbed out of his car, the uneven stride of his footprints. I open them and shine my light around the rest of the stall. That's when I see it. Photographs tacked to the wall, pinned with old nails. I shine the beam one by one. Curtis alone at his workbench. Curtis smiling at a fair. Curtis in his driveway waving at neighbors. Then I notice others. Pictures of me, 40 at least. Me checking IDs at the station, me loading paper into my printer, me staring at the dashboard camera in my cruiser. Someone followed me. Someone took pictures from my porch. Each photo has a red circle drawn around my face. My breath hitches. A photograph of my daughter at her graduation has red ring smeared, like someone pressed their thumb through a wet stain. My fist clenches around the maglight's handle until my knuckles burn. The overhead bulb flickers, and in that second I think I hear a footstep, barefoot, behind me. I spin, gun raised, heart pounding so hard I can almost see it in the beam. There's nothing but drifting dust motes and the empty doorway. Sweat beads on my forehead despite the cold. I force myself to exhale. I step backward, scanning the wall of photos, mind racing. Why here? Why me? Another sound. The door behind me jerks on its hinges. My whole body tightens. I train the light on the darkness beyond the threshold. The beam catches the shape of a man stepping inside, shoulders broad, coat dripping with snow, face hidden by shadow. My finger hovers over the trigger. "Show yourself," I bark, voice cracking. He stops at the threshold, head tilted slightly. A hush falls so heavy it's like silence has weight. Then I see it. A glint in the gloom. Steel, curved, not a knife blade, but something sleeker. A calling card, maybe. My heart hammers against my ribs. He steps forward, slow. The beam illuminates part of his face, thin lips curled in a slight, satisfied smile. I swallow hard, mind racing with protocol. Backup orders, homicide procedures, none of it matters now. I take a step back, sliding on the hay. He raises a hand, pointing toward the barn's back wall, where I saw another photograph. My partner, Deputy Collins, circled in red. My partner, whose cruiser is parked back on the highway, 14 miles that way. He tilts his head, then he turns and disappears into the black beyond the door, footsteps echoing into the night. The bulb flickers out. Complete darkness. I stand frozen, chest tight, listening to the wind howl through the cracks in the boards. My radio squeals with static, distant sirens cutting in and out. I click my mag light on, half the beam gone, and sweep it across the stall. The photographs hang limp, the bodies of Curtis and my Hope resting on the floor. I step over Curtis's body, pick up the photograph of Collins, fold it carefully, and slip it into my coat pocket. My breath is ragged, and I know the first section of this nightmare is over. The storm rages outside, but the real blizzard is finished. For now. I slide the cruiser's headlight off the road and onto the frozen shoulder, kill the engine, and let the heater die. My name's Deputy Marcus Brooks, Sunnyside County, and I've been awake for 8 hours straight, chasing calls through storm warnings and outright blizzards. Tonight feels no different. Just another routine check of a stranded motorist. But out here past midnight, routine can turn lethal in an instant. I open the door and step onto the packed snow. It crunches under my boots, a brittle sound that echoes across the empty trees. The wind claws at my collar, forcing me to lean forward as I walk around the hood. My breath puffs in ragged clouds. I drag the old army throw blanket from the back seat, wrap it around my shoulders. It's heavy, scratchy, but better than nothing. The sky above is a low ceiling of moving gray. Moonlight can't break through the clouds, and stars aren't brave enough to peek. I stand beside the sedan, a midnight blue Chevy Malibu that a passing semi-driver flagged down. Headlights still on, sputtering against the dark. I shine my mag light through the windshield. Salt tracks crisscross the glass. Windshield wiper blade bent at a strange angle. I kneel and brush snow off the license plate. 4DGY 732, then radio dispatch. Unit 12, Sunnyside. I have the vehicle. Plate registered to Curtis Dane, mechanic, Mill Creek. Doors open, no one in sight. Static crackles back, then dispatch's voice. Copy that, Unit 12. Backup's en route, but all units are tied up on other calls. ETA 30 minutes. I nod, even though no one can see me. I acknowledge, but don't wait. Lives can hang by threads in this cold. I stand and sweep the beam along the road's edge. A single set of footprints cuts into the woods. A fresh track, heavy, ragged. I grip my flashlight in one hand, my service revolver in the other. My vest scratches when I shift, reminding me it's there. I take a breath, tight, and step off the road. The snow swallows half my boot at each step. My legs burn. Every breath I draw tastes like steel. The footprints lead into a stand of pines, their needles drooping under snow's weight. The trees loom overhead, spindly sentinels reaching into the void. I advance slowly, the beam dancing across the bark, illuminating the fresh tracks, then old animal trails, then nothing again. Each breath feels louder than it should, and I clench my jaw to shut out the noise. My gloves are soaked. I can feel the chill creeping through to my fingers. 10 yards in, the trees give way to the silhouette of an old barn. Lock Barn, abandoned 10 years back when the farm went under. Nobody lives out here anymore, but trouble has a way of stopping in lonely places. The barn door stands cracked, rusted hinges groaning in the breeze. A single unshuttered window on the second level pries open like an empty eye socket. Through it, I glimpse faint glow, weak, yellow, like an old bulb trying to fight the dark. I move closer, cold wind pushing me forward. My flashlight picks out the texture of the weathered boards, splintered wood, gray and swollen, seams wide enough to see through. I push the door with the butt of my flashlight. It swings open, scraping stone and wood. Inside, the temperature drops another 10 degrees. I swallow against the dry air. My beam cuts through the blackness. Hay bales stacked in uneven rows, rusty tools scattered, pitchforks, spanners, battered buckets. The smell is sharp, decay, mold, and something coppery that sets my nerves on edge. I kneel to examine deep red streaks on a plank. Blood. I press my gloved fingers to the smear, sticky, cold. I glance down at my gloves and wipe them on my jacket, turning my back on the smear so I don't think about who it belongs to. I stand and sweep the light further in. Shapes loom under tarps, too large to be equipment. I step forward, boots slipping on loose hay. Every hair on my neck stands up. I drop to one, knee and hook the corner of a dark tarp. A body slumps beneath, the shoulders curled, head lolling forward. I press a hand to his chest. No warmth, no pulse. I breathe in and out hard. Curtis Dane, I whisper, though I know it's him. I radio dispatch. Unit 12. Subject is deceased. Possible foul play. Request homicide. Crime scene. EMS. My voice fractures on the last word. I push off the bale, boots crunching. My maglite slips from my grip, clatters. I catch it. The beam catches something on the wall, photographs. I step back. The photos are old newsprints. Curtis at his workbench, Curtis laughing at a kid's birthday party, Curtis waving at neighbors. Blood spatter flecked across some of them like a twisted mosaic. I swallow, scanning for any sign of life, but there is none. Then I see more photos. My own face. Me checking tags at the station, me patting down a suspect, me standing in front of the jail booking room. A dozen pictures circled in red. I yank my arm back, throw a glance around the stall. No sign of anyone else. The barn's single bulb flickers overhead, casting every object into a jittery dance. My heart pounds. I leave the tarp and move to the wall. Photos of other locals, strangers, circles around every face. Victims, maybe. And beneath them all, a crude map of county roads, red lines snaking from Mill Creek to here, and my name scrawled, Brooks. The floor beneath me groans. I bring the maglite around, pointing in every direction. Gun hand steady now, training on every dark corner. The beam rests on the far door, ajar, ice crystals melting around the edges. I step toward it, every muscle taut. I flash the light through the gap. Nothing but snow blowing in. I push it faster, and the door swings wide with a crash that rattles my teeth. Beyond, the forest yawns back at me, silent. I clear my throat and speak, voice low. This is Deputy Brooks. Whoever's here, come out with your hands up. My words vanish in the rafters. I keep my stance, gloved hand wrapped around the barrel of my revolver. Static crackles on the radio, my own breathing amplified, then the ping. Unit 12, acknowledge? Here, I say, proceeding to clear. I can't help it. Training kicks in. I check my 6, sweep the light back inside. Then I see it. A narrow trail of footprints leading from the body, out through the far door. No question, someone carried Curtis here, then disappeared. My pulse spikes. I tighten my grip, step toward the door. My boots crunch outside. Snow drifts around my legs. The footprints carve a path into the darker trees. A lone set, deep impressions, and then nothing. I shine my light into the forest, but the beam hits only snow and black trunks. The storm intensifies. Flakes whirl like moths around the lamp beam. Branches rattle above like old bones. My heart hammers. Somewhere deep inside, I swear I hear footsteps, quiet just beyond sight. I stay still, listening. The only answer is the wind. I swallow and step back to the barn. I scoop up the photographs of Curtis and me, slip photos into my coat. I steady breathing, though my chest aches. I check the time on my wristwatch, 12:17 a.m. 10 more minutes until backup if I'm lucky. I turn back to the dark interior, rub the back of my neck. Cold drips down my collar. I lift my maglite and gun, ready to move deeper if I must. But my gut twists. This is no accident. Someone planned it. Someone watched me arrive. And out there in the trees, waiting, is the proof. I step forward again, boots crunching, and disappear into the shadows. I open the cruiser door and step onto the gravel shoulder. Boots crunching against the rough surface, half buried in snow. The wind bites through my jacket, finding the gap at my collar and sending a cold pulse across my neck. I pull the old army blanket tighter around my shoulders. Scratchy, heavy, soaked through with memories of other sleepless nights. My name's Deputy Marcus Brooks, badge number 1637, Sunnyside County Sheriff's Office. It's 20 minutes past midnight on a March night that feels as endless as the black that hangs between the trees. I pause, listening. The heater clicks off in the cruiser behind me, and a hush settles, thick enough to taste. Condensation beads on the windows where I sat, ready to chase another routine call into whatever shape it wants to take. There's no streetlight here. The constellation of overhead stars is hidden by low-hanging clouds trembling with snow. Through the windshield, the lane fades between two walls of pines, nature's cathedral, cold and silent. The headlights catch a flash of midnight blue metal up ahead. A Chevy Malibu, license plate 4DGY732. Its running lights still casting dim beams onto the scuffed hood. I walk around the vehicle, flashlight in one hand, revolver in the other. The snow crunches deeper here, thick enough to whisper under each step. I kneel at the driver's door and tap the glass. It's iced over, fine salt crystals coating the pane. I brush them aside and peer in, the seatbelt slack draped across the seat, the ignition cold. No movement. I rise, shining my maglite across the tires, half buried in drift, slush crusted against the wheel wells. I press the radio button. Dispatch Unit 12, at the scene. Plate 4DGY732, registered to Curtis Dane of Mill Creek. Vehicle unoccupied, running lights on, no sign of driver. My voice sounds hollow in the still air. An instant later, static crackles back. Unit 12, copy that, backup en route. All units tied up on a barn fire near Harlow's Bend. ETA 30 minutes. I reply with a curt, copy that, but my tone tells them I'm not waiting. I tuck my revolver back in its holster and drag on the blanket's hood, pulling it over my head. The night's cold scours my cheeks. I step off the gravel into snow, boots sinking up to mid-calf. Each footfall is a small explosion of white. I train the flashlight on the tire tracks. They lead off the road, veering into a stand of pines, turning the black behind them dull gray. I swallow. The footprints are singular. Heavy prints, spaced unevenly, the right foot dragging, scraping across the snow. Looks like someone injured. I follow them step by step. My shoulders ache under the weight of the blanket, my neck stiff from the chill. I remind myself to breathe evenly, to keep senses sharp. Every crunch, every creak of wood under snow, Every swish of sleet against bark registers like a shout. The beam cuts a tunnel through swirling flakes, throwing sparing light on branches laden with ice, snow mounds rising like gravestones. The world seems alive, watching. I grip the flashlight like a lifeline. 50 yards in, the trees open onto a clearing. There's a foundation of fieldstone to my left, half collapsed, mortar crumbling. This is the old lock barn, long abandoned. I remember hearing about kids trespassing here when I first started. They painted graffiti on one remaining plank and dared each other to spend the night inside. The land's been for sale for years. I scan the opening where a plank door once hung. Now it's a wide gap, ragged and yawning. I step under a rusted beam, careful not to catch a boot on wire. Wood creaks overhead. The air shifts. It's colder, damp, with a metallic tang I know too well. I flick on my headlamp. It casts a narrow beam across a stall filled with stray hay bales. In one corner, I spot crimson on yellow straw. I swap the headlamp beam for my mag light, aim low. Blood. Dried, but sticky at the edges. I crouch and examine footprints. Bare indentations crossing the bloodstain, heading deeper into the darkness. Smaller prints intermingle with the larger ones that led here. Another person. Maybe tracking the injured man, maybe the cause. I rise, keeping the light sweeping. Hay bales stacked against one wall, shadows pooling between. On the opposite wall, tools hang on nails. Pitchfork, shovel, tongs. Anything that could become a weapon. I step forward slowly, boots sinking into loose hay. Then I see the tarp. Dark green, heavy canvas, pinned at one corner by a nail. I lean forward and lift it with the tip of my flashlight. The body beneath slumps like a discarded mannequin, cloth jacket over the form, limbs curled. I crouch, sweep the beam across the face. It's Curtis Dane. Eyes closed, pale as ash, mouth slack. He wears a pair of jeans and a plaid shirt, drenched in snow and blood. I take a steadying breath, press my gloved fingers against his carotid. No pulse. My heart hammers. I sit back on my heels. Wind whistles through broken boards. I stand and call into the dark. Curtis, it's Sheriff's office. Deputy Brooks, can you hear me? My voice seems swallowed by the rafters. Nothing answers but distant creaks and the faint hum of my cruiser's heater engine idling out on the road. I radio dispatch. Unit 12. Deceased subject at Lock Barn. Possible homicide. Request homicide unit, EMS, and crime scene. My voice trembles on the word homicide. I press the mic until my knuckles whiten. Dispatch, we have blood, footprints, and a body. No witnesses. Road slick. Backup, ETA uncertain. The crackle buzzes. Copy that, Unit 12, Roger on requests. I hang up. I stand close, checking for other clues. The tarp hides viscera, hidden wounds, but I don't lift it further. I look instead at the tools. Some have fresh rust stains. Someone left them out, staged them. I shine my light on the far corner and see photographs tacked to the wall. I step toward them, beam trembling. There's a photo of Curtis standing beside his pickup, one of him smiling at a child's birthday. Then, pictures of me, at the station desk, loading paperwork, descending a stairwell. They're printed on cheap photographic paper, edges torn. Each image has a red circle around the subject's face. On one corner, I recognize my partner, Deputy Collins, circled in thick red marker. I shudder. This isn't random. Someone's been watching us. I swallow and check my watch, 12:28 a.m., 10 minutes since I arrived. Outside, the wind slams against the barn, rattling boards. Snow drifts swirl through cracks, layering the floor. I sweep the light across the map drawn crudely in charcoal on the wall. Outlines of rural roads, pins marking spots. 5 locations total: Mill Creek, Highway 47 curve, East Ridge Overlook, Harlow's Bend Barn, and here. Each pin has initials beside it: CD, MB, DC. My chest tightens. I realize MB is me, DC is Deputy Collins, but Curtis Dane's initials were CD. He's the bait. I step back, scanning every shadow. I barely notice when the overhead bulb flickers. One solitary bulb hanging from a frayed wire. It sputters and nearly dies. My head snaps up. Then it bursts back to amber life, throwing everything into sharp relief. The body, the photos, the tools, now glaringly obvious as props in a trap. I check my magazine, 6 rounds, extra speed loader in my pocket. My mind races through protocol: preserve the scene, wait for backup, secure evidence. But backup is miles out in a barn fire, and I'm alone in a predator's lair. My hand tightens on the maglight's grip. I look toward the door, open a crack of night beyond. The footprint trail from Curtis continues there, vanishing beneath pines. I step toward it, each footfall a drumbeat in my ears. My flashlight beam flickers, as if encouraged by the storm. I study every step, every shadow, as though the darkness might hide a shape lurking just beyond vision. My pulse pounds so loud I hear it in my teeth. I halt at the threshold, scanning left and right. The footprints vanish into deep snow, then reappear at odd intervals. Someone led Curtis here, then left him, and they might still be out there, watching. My radio crackles with distant static. I press the button. Dispatch, Unit 12. I'm checking the exterior. No sign of subjects. Road's empty. I know the words are a lie. I can feel eyes on me. I step forward into the snow, wind tearing at my blanket, and disappear between the black trunks, tracking those footprints into a night that has just begun to reveal its true shape. I step out into the swirling snow, each breath a cloud that vanishes against the trees. The wind's a living thing here, pressing against my chest, clawing at the throw blanket wrapped tight around my shoulders. I leave the open barn door behind me and follow the faint footprint trail into deeper dark, every crunch underfoot sounding like a warning. My flashlight's beam cuts a cone of visibility, but beyond that it's just black, broken only by the silhouettes of pines heaving under snow's weight. I trudge on, boots sinking past my ankles. The prints lead uphill now, slanted steps dragging through drifts. My legs burn, each step sharper than the last, but I push on. The forest tightens around me, branches low enough to catch on my blanket hood. I clear them with a gloved hand and keep moving, mind cycling through possibilities. Injured man stumbling, predator stalking. Either way, I'm the bait. At the crest of the rise, the prints stop. I shine the beam across a low stone wall, an old boundary marker, and beyond it, the land falls away into a shallow hollow. At the bottom, a single outbuilding stands alone, its weatherboards gray and warped. A broken window to one side hangs like a gaping tooth. No door remains. It's thrown wide, dark inside. My pulse thunders. I've never seen this structure on any map or survey. I lower myself down the far side of the embankment, boots slipping on ice. Each step needs care. I catch a branch, steady myself, then grip the flashlight tighter. At the bottom, snow covers a rough path around the building. I crouch to examine prints. 2 sets this time, one large, one small, moving away from the door. The smaller set drags more, toes scraping. Could be Curtis, weak and bleeding. The larger set carries deeper, purposeful. I rise and circle the building, hugging the wall. The razor wind pushes me forward, pushing my hood back, exposing my hair to the cold. I lean close to the broken window and shine the light inside. The floor is layered in straw and debris. My beam picks out strange shapes. An overturned chair, a metal grate leaning against the wall, and something pinned to a rafter overhead. A kerchief, stained red, tied in a tight knot. I duck back, heart slamming. I step forward, flashlight bobbing, and investigate the chair. Underneath, a scattering of personal items. A set of car keys, a wallet bearing Curtis's ID, a torn photograph of him with his daughter, her face scratched away. I pick up the photo by a corner, fingertips numb, studying the tear. Someone meant to hurt the family symbolically, not just Curtis. A rasp from behind makes me spin, gun drawn. My mag light slips in my other hand, clattering against my holster. I catch it mid-fall. The beam swings across the room, catching a shadow at the far end that wasn't there moments ago. I can't tell if it's a person or just a trick of light. I swallow, voice low. Come out. Now. Silence. Then a faint crack, a board underfoot somewhere deeper in the hollow. I step toward the sound, careful, finger on the trigger. My boot nudges something soft under the straw. I drop to one knee and brush straw aside, a torn piece of denim caught by a jagged nail. The fabric's blood-stained. I press my ear to the ground. Nothing but my own heartbeat roaring in my head. On a sudden impulse, I sweep the beam upward. There, lashed to a rafter by a length of rope, swings a burlap sack. It shifts slightly as though caught in a draft. I raise the gun, hand shaking. The sack's seam is ripped open at the bottom. I shine the light through the tear. A pair of eyes, wide, blank, frozen. My stomach lurches. It's not Curtis, the face is too small. I keep the beam fixed, ready for movement, but the head tilts in the dark, and I glimpse bruised cheeks and sunken mouth. Whoever he is, he didn't die peacefully. My radio crackles to life. Unit 12, you there? Dispatch's voice sounds frantic now. We've got multiple units converging on your location. Stay put. I holster the revolver. Copy. Send them to the lock barn first. I switch the beam to my sidearm, pulling it free again. I scan the room once more. No other exits, just the window behind me and the open door leading back up the hill. I step to the door, wind whipping snow inside and filling the rafters with glittering flakes. I turn for one last look. The burlap head hangs motionless, a grotesque sentinel. My breath catches and I close my eyes for a heartbeat, enough for the storm to press in deeper. When I open them, I spot something carved into the far wall. 3 tally marks, deep gouges in the wood, and beneath them the letters MB, scored in crude script. My knees buckle. I drop the maglite and watch it roll across the straw, beam flickering on the tally. I press my gloved palm to the wall, feeling the jagged gouge. MB, me. I realize the predator is laying claim, marking victims like game. Curtis's death marked CD. This new mark is mine. Sirens wail in the distance now, growing louder. The cold seeps through every layer of my clothing. Panic twitches at the edge of my mind. I need to get out, need to warn the incoming units, but my feet feel glued. The storm's howling and the wooden shack groans around me as though alive. Then, from somewhere low by my boot, I hear a soft scuffle. Something stirs behind the door. My heart leaps. I scramble back inside, gun raised. The door swings inward, slow, deliberate, creaking. In the doorway stands a figure, tall, shoulders broad beneath a tattered coat. His face is obscured by shadow, but I know him by posture, by the tilt of his head. He steps forward into the room, boots clicking on the floorboards. I take a trembling step back, pressing my hand against the wall beside those tally marks. He stops 2 feet away. The storm's cold wind whips through the doorway, extinguishing the fading maglite beam. Darkness floods the shack. He raises a fist, not in anger, but holding a single photograph. My daughter's school picture, face untouched here. He holds it out to me, extending his arm slowly. I swallow and extend my own hand to take it, but before I can, he whispers my name. Deputy Brooks. And the shack shakes with wind and the weight of everything I've seen. The moment stretches, suspended between breath and ice, before he turns and steps back into the storm, leaving me in darkness with the tally marks carved into the wood and the photograph burning in my hand. I pull the collar of my blanket tighter around my neck and press forward through the drift, boots sinking thigh-deep by the time I crest the small rise. The storm's fury intensifies, wind lashing snow sideways, swirling so thick I can't see more than 10 feet ahead. My flashlight beam wavers, stuttering through the flakes, and my ribs ache from fighting with the blanket's weight. Each inhalation feels like shards of glass in my lungs. I force myself onward, mind locked on the last footprints I saw trailing into this hollow. The only proof of any living soul out here. The hollow opens into a shallow basin, a natural amphitheater of pines and broken stumps. At its center stands an ancient farmhouse I swear wasn't on any map. It's lean and rotted, shingles missing, siding bleached in patches. 2 boarded windows stare like blind eyes, and the front door hangs loosely on one hinge, squeaking with each gust. A faint glow seeps through cracks in the boards on the upper floor, flickering like a single lantern fighting the dark. I squint against the storm, heart hammering. My boots slip on ice-coated stones as I approach the porch. The wind moans through the broken boards, carrying voices I almost mistake for people whispering. I shake it off, setting my jaw. I press my flashlight to the latch and give it a shove. The door swings open on creaking hinges, revealing an entryway piled high with rotted debris, fallen beams, broken furniture, winter's debris shoveled inside like a fortress. I step in, jamming the front of my revolver into my hip and training the maglight's beam across the chaos. Inside is dark and suffocating, the air thick with rot and the iron tang of old blood. My headlamp lights the ceiling beams, festooned with webs and icicles dripping onto piles of rotted straw. The floorboards groan under my weight. I sweep left. Empty kitchen, collapsed cabinets, a rusted stove strewn with charred pans. To my right, a living room with a sagging hearth and a mantel lined with jars of pickled vegetables long since fermented into slime. A mirror above the mantel hangs broken, shards littering the floor. My pulse spikes when I notice scrawled writing on the soot-blackened wall above it. 3 tally marks etched deep into plaster, and beside them the letters MB gouged wide. My breath catches. Those marks match the ones in the Hollow's outbuilding. Someone's been here, marking time, marking victims. I ram my forehead against the door frame, forcing away a surge of nausea. I tap the radio. Unit 12. I'm at an abandoned farmhouse, just off the Lock Barn Trail. The place is rigged, bloodstains, tally marks on walls. Request immediate backup. I pause, but static is my only reply. No sirens, no scratch of dispatch. The storm must have swallowed the signal. I step deeper, flashlight in one hand, revolver in the other, pulses of light striking broken beams and scattered porcelain. Then my beam catches something on the floor, a crumpled scrap of paper nearly hidden under a dry leaf. I crouch, clear away dirt and litter, and pull it free. It's a photograph, torn at the edges, the remains of a Polaroid showing Curtis and me posing after a training exercise at the station yard, laughing awkwardly in rain slickers. On the back, scrawled in red ink, "Thank you for joining the hunt." Beneath, 4 names, Curtis Dane, Marcus Brooks, Daniel Collins, and one I don't recognize, each followed by a date. The bottom line reads, "Your turn, March 9th, 1919, to Today is March 9th. A tremor jolts me. I press my gloved fingers to the wall, cold plaster flecking under my nails. My headlamp flickers, and I fight the urge to run. The farmhouse feels alive, breathing around me. I stand, slipping the photo into my jacket pocket. My revolver feels heavy as lead at my side. I sweep the beam upward to the stairs at the far end of the room. They ascend into utter darkness, missing several treads, each step rotten and treacherous. But the flickering upstairs light calls me like a beacon. I approach the staircase slowly, every sense screaming to hold back. The banister is splintered, each post is cracked. I place one boot on the bottom step, and it groans loud enough to echo. I hesitate, then press forward, testing each board before committing my weight. The beam catches a dark, wet stain on the first landing, a smear of blood that runs back to the wall, then a crudely drawn arrow pointing upward with the words, "This way," carved beside it. My skin prickles. Someone prepared this path for me. I keep climbing, the winds howl dampening as I gain height. Finally, I reach the top and shine the light down a narrow hallway. 4 doorways gape, 2 on each side. The glow flickers from the last door on the right. I draw closer, gun first, footstep precise. My heart hammers in my throat. I grip the doorknob, cold metal biting through my glove, and give it a twist. It creaks open, revealing a small bedroom. The single lantern inside hangs from a nail in the ceiling, swinging, flame dancing feebly against drafts. The room is empty, except for a rocking chair in the center, its cushions stained dark, slumped at an odd angle as if someone left in haste. I sweep my light to the walls, photos, dozens of them, lined up in neat columns, faces of locals I recognize from missing person reports. Each has a red circle around the eyes, then names and dates underneath. I scan for my own. 1, 2, 3, here I am, eyes circled, date blank, that's mine. Next face is Daniel Collins, and beneath all the photos, a city map of Sunnyside County pinned in rough etchings, with red X's marking each victim's last known location, burlap pins stuck where they were found. The final X sits right here at this farmhouse. My stomach twists. I raise the mag light to the rocking chair. On its seat rests another Polaroid, this time of my daughter's last birthday, the one I missed because of OT. She's grinning with frosting smeared on her chin. I force myself to step forward, each heartbeat a drum of dread. I pick up the photo and tuck it in my vest. The rocking chair jerks once, scraping wood on floor. I spin. The lantern's flame shudders. A voice, low and measured, comes from the corner behind the door. "Nice to see you, Deputy Brooks." It's calm, too calm. I freeze, mid-breath. My revolver shakes in my grip. "Show yourself," I demand, voice hoarse. "It's over." The voice laughs softly, almost kindly. "Is it?" A figure steps out of shadow. A lean man in oilskin, face gaunt, eyes bright with a cold light. He smiles, tilting his head. I recognize him now. Barnes, the landowner who vanished 3 months ago on a welfare check. Everyone thought he'd left town, but here he is. He steps closer, barefoot on the wood. Each step makes me flinch. The lantern light traces his features, sunken cheeks, a deliberate grin. "You think it's over because you found Curtis," he says. "But finding Curtis was just the beginning. Now it's your turn to play hide and seek." He raises a shaking finger at the door behind him. On the floor, tiny footprints lead under the bed and vanish. They're child-sized. Heat rises in my chest. "Where's Collins?" I whisper. Barnes tilts his head back and laughs, a hollow rattling sound that makes my bones ache. "Your partner?" he asks, voice echoing. He's warmer than you think." He lifts a gloved hand and raps twice on the wall, and I see behind him another door I hadn't noticed. It's sealed with boards, nails protruding. He pulls a hammer from his coat, hands it to me. "Break it," he says softly. "Let him out. Then maybe I'll let you go." My heart pounds so loud I can't think. I look at him, look at the hammer in his outstretched hand, look at the sealed door. I know what's behind there. I know the risk. Sirens wail below, backup finally forcing its way through the storm. I cast my gaze back to Barnes, then the door. He tilts his head, smile widening. "Time's up, deputy." My hand closes around the hammer. I swallow, lift it. The lantern teeters on the nail, casting shadows that dance across the blood-spattered walls. My breath catches in my chest as I raise the hammer. Before I can swing, the lantern's flame shudders out. Total darkness. The rocking chair creaks on its own. A soft, wet thud comes from behind the sealed door. Then, nothing but my own ragged breathing and the storm's roar seeping through the cracks. I tighten my grip on the hammer and whisper to the black, "I hear you, Collins." And I strike. I slide the cruiser's high beams off the asphalt and onto the gravel shoulder, kill the engine, and let the heater's hum die into silence. The sudden quiet feels thick, like I've stepped out of one world into another. My name's Deputy Marcus Brooks, badge 1637, Sunnyside County Sheriff's Office, and tonight I'm the only soul awake for miles. The clock on my dash reads 12:02 a.m. It's March 9th, 2019, well past the cusp of routine, and already my bones are aching from an 18-hour shift, but I can't look away from that stranded car up the lane. I open the door and step into the wind. Snow whips around my legs, cold burrowing through the seams of my coat. My boots grind into loose gravel under a brittle crust of ice, the only sound besides the distant groan of pines swaying in the wind. I yank the army throw blanket off the back seat, scratchy and familiar, and wrap it tight around my shoulders. The weight of it is comforting, like an old friend, but it can't keep the cold from clawing at my neck. I tuck my chin into the collar, headlamp clicking on with a soft beep. The weak cone of light shivers across the drifting snow. I lift my mag light with one hand and my revolver with the other, chest tightening as I approach the vehicle. A midnight blue Chevy Malibu, license plate 4DGY732, sits half buried in drift, engine off, running lights still casting dim halos against the fresh snow. I kneel on one knee, brush salt and snow from the plate, and radio dispatch. Unit 12 at the scene. Plate belongs to Curtis Dane, Mill Creek mechanic. Vehicle unoccupied. Driver's door ajar. My voice sounds flat to my own ears. Static crackles. Copy, Unit 12. Backup en route. ETA 30 minutes. All other units on a structure fire near Harlow's Bend. Copy that, I reply, though copy is meaningless out here. I tighten my grip on the mag light and stand, scanning the tree line. The beam cuts a path through the darkness, illuminating the footprints in the snow. One set, heavy and uneven, veering off the road and into the pines. The right foot drags a shallow groove, as though whoever left them was wounded. I clamp my teeth and step off the shoulder into the drift, each footfall muffled by the powder. I follow the prints uphill. Snowflakes fall thick as confetti, plastering my flashlight onto every drooping branch. Wind hisses through the treetops, an endless whisper. My boots sink to mid-calf in some spots, and the cold bites through my gloves as I drag my hands along tree trunks for balance. The tracks lead me to the rotting skeleton of the lock barn, abandoned since the family went bankrupt nearly 10 years ago. Now it stands like a broken tooth, foundation stones half buried, weathered boards sagging in bitter silence. I duck under a fallen beam and push the door, Once a solid slab of wood, now a rickety plank loose on its hinges. It groans against dry stone and splinters. Inside, the temperature drops further. The air tastes of damp rot and old hay. My headlamp flickers as I step across a threshold of debris, shattered glass from a broken window, rusted tools scattered where they fell, clumps of straw pressed flat under boot-torn floorboards. The beam catches dark streaks on the wall. Blood, long cold and sticky. I swallow and advance, hearts pounding each time the boards creak under my weight. Hay bales line the far wall, stacked in uneven columns like makeshift barricades. Between them, a dark green tarp hangs over an object low to the ground. I crouch, careful not to let the tarp brush my glove and slip its edge aside. Underneath, a man's form lies curled on his side, jeans and plaid shirt soaked through and plastered to the straw with frozen blood. I force myself closer, check for movement. None. Curtis Dane. Dead. I lean back against a post, breathe jagged and radio, Unit 12, subject is deceased. Frostbite and blunt force trauma suspected. Foul play, request homicide, EMS, and CSI. The reply is static and distant. I clamp the mic down and swallow hard, taste metallic dread in my mouth. I set my flashlight on the floor and kneel beside the body, letting my gloved fingers brush through his hair. His eyes stare blank at the rafters, pale as wet ash. I close his lids gently. Upstairs, the rafters moan under snow's weight. I rise, sweep my beam across the stall, and spot photographs tacked to the far wall. Curtis smiling at a cattle show. Curtis waving at his daughter. Curtis beneath an oil rig. Each picture has a red circle around his face, a crude flourish that makes the hobby project feel like an accusation. I pivot, beam landing on more prints. Faces of local residents I recognize from police reports, each circled in red, though some photos are too grainy to read names. Then I see me, Deputy Brooks at the station desk, Deputy Brooks patting down a suspect, Deputy Brooks in uniform next to cruiser lights. My chest constricts. My reflection in a cracked pane behind those photos looks haunted. Someone's been watching me. The barn's single overhead bulb flickers, casting every object into a jittery dance. I rub my hands together, forcing them to stop trembling. I collect the photos from the floor, careful not to touch the edges, and slide them into an evidence bag from my coat pocket. My revolver hovers at the ready. One false move, and I don't know what might emerge from the dark. A soft scuff behind me makes my head snap around. Nothing but empty space and falling snow drifting through the broken rafters. My pulse thunders in my throat. I press the maglight's lens against my cheek, listening for heartbeat or breath or movement. The barn holds its secrets tight. I can almost feel eyes on me, weight behind every dark corner. I shove past the hay bales and come upon a makeshift altar. A crude wooden chair positioned center room, surrounded by a circle of rusted farm tools. Pitchfork, chainsaw blade, spade, each blade planted point first. On the seat sits a police scanner, its speaker crackling with distant patrol chatter. My patrol chatter. I take a step forward, hand on the gun, heart pounding. Beyond the tools, a county map hangs on the wall, its roads traced in faded ink. Locations are crossed out in dried blood. Milk Creek, East Ridge Overlook, Harlow's Bend Barn. And here, Lock Barn, circled 3 times. I inch closer until the scanner noise becomes garbled voices. I recognize my own call signs. Then another voice, a whisper over the static mocking, "Nice work, Deputy Brooks." My skin prickles. I pivot, shining my light on the rafters. Shadows tilt as though alive. I swallow and turn back to the map. Beneath it, carved into the wood, 3 tally marks and the letters MB gouged deep. My name. My head snaps toward the barn door. The snow has stopped falling, but the wind rattles its broken boards. I raise my revolver, finger trembling on the trigger guard. The backup sirens are still miles off. Out here, I'm alone with a killer who knows me by name and has turned a routine patrol into a nightmare. I take a breath, cold, hard, steady, and step toward the door. Behind me, the circle of tools seems to watch, silent witnesses to blood and betrayal. Outside, the world is a blur of white and black. Inside, the barn holds its final secret. Someone's waiting for me to leave the circle. I step through the threshold, boots crunching again, and vanish into the storm. I kill the engine, and the heater's low hum dies into the wind. I press my boot into the snow beside the cruiser and step down hard. My name's Deputy Marcus Brooks, badge 1637, Sunnyside County Sheriff's Office, and I've been awake since yesterday's dawn. My bones ache like they'll never stop, but when the call came in, stranded vehicle southbound on County Road 14, plate 4DGY 732, no missing person report, I didn't hesitate. Out here, past midnight, stranded can mean something far darker. Snow falls in heavy sheets, blanketing everything in white. I pull the old army throw blanket from the back seat and wrap it tight around my shoulders. It scratches, but it's warmth, and I need any comfort I can get. My headlamp clicks on with a dull beep, my mag light clicks open in my left hand, and my revolver settles heavy at my side. I pull the door shut against the wind and step away from the cruiser. The gravel under my boots crunches, rough against the dark crust of frozen dirt. I shine my mag light across the hood of the Chevy Malibu up ahead. The witness's rig. Running lights still on, a dim orange glow that flickers against the falling snow. I kneel and brush the ice from the front plate. 4DGY 732. Radio in, Unit 12 on scene, plate registered to Curtis Dane, Mill Creek mechanic, vehicle unoccupied, door ajar. My words hang in the air, no answer but static. The tracks in the snow tell the next chapter. One set of prints leads into the pines, a heavy right foot, a labored left, a drag in the powder. Someone injured moved off the road, but you don't wander into these woods unless you're desperate. I follow the prints uphill, boots sinking past my ankles. My breath frosts in front of me, pluming out and vanishing. The trees loom like silent sentinels, limbs bowed under snow's weight. Wind moans through their tops, a low, restless sound. After 50 yards, the trees thin, and I spy the old log barn, a crumbling ruin most kids dared each other to spend a night in. It stands half buried in drifts, boards splintered, foundation stones cracked. I duck beneath a fallen beam and push through the gap where the door used to hang. Inside, the air is stale, almost colder than outside. The floor is littered with debris, broken glass, rusted tools, piles of collapsed hay. I sweep my mag light across the far corner and catch the glint of dark streaks on wood, blood. I step over a broken spade and kneel, wiping snow from the smear. It's sticky, frozen at the edges. I touch it lightly, iron tang hits my tongue through frozen fingertips. I sit back on my heels, breathing hard, and radio dispatch. Unit 12, blood in barn. Possible injured subject, request EMS and CSI. The mic crackles, but no one really hears me through the storm. Hay bales line one side, stacked in uneven columns. On the opposite wall, a dark green tarp hangs from a nail. I step forward, heart hammering, and tug the edge. Underneath lies a body, jeans and plaid shirt soaked in blood, head slumped against a wooden beam. I blink, swallow, and kneel beside the man. It's Curtis Dane. His eyes are half open, glassy, no pulse. I close his lids gently, then sit back against a post, fighting bile. The barn groans under Snow's weight. I sweep my eyes upward. A single bare bulb droops from the ceiling, wires frayed, flickering. When it pulses, it casts every object into a jittery dance. My maglite beam finds photographs tacked to the wall. Curtis smiling at a county fair. Curtis with his daughter at a birthday party, each image marked by a red circle around his face. The next batch, local residents, neighbors I know, each circled in red. Then, pictures of me. Deputy Brooks checking IDs, Deputy Brooks at my desk, Deputy Brooks in uniform. Every photo has a red circle around my face. My chest tightens. Someone's been watching me. The barn feels alive, breathing around me. I rise, mind racing through protocols. Preserve the scene, wait for backup, mark evidence. Backup is miles away fighting a structure fire. I push off the beam and cross to the wall where a county map hangs, roads traced in faded ink. X's mark 5 locations: Mill Creek, Curtis's home, the Highway 47 curve, East Ridge Overlook, Harlow's Bend barn, and here, Lock barn, circled 3 times in dried blood. I swallow and run gloved hands over my face. The wind howls through gaps in the boards, carrying distant sirens that haven't reached me yet. I need to stay focused. I drag my maglite back across the floor and pick up a police scanner from the chair someone left in the center of the room. It sputters with static and catches a fraction of my own code. Then another voice faintly comes through, low, mocking. "You did good, Deputy Brooks." My hair stands on end. I drop the scanner, kneel, and search my coat pocket for evidence bags. I bag the photos from the floor, careful, slow, and seal them. Tools line the floor: pitchforks, chainsaw blade, shovel, arranged in a circle pointed inward. The barrel of my gun twitches upward. Whoever did this built a circle, a ritual. I step through, careful not to disturb prints. Each blade glints in the dim light. From somewhere overhead I hear movement. My heart pounds in my ears. I bring my maglite up to the rafters. Nothing but hanging icicles and spider webs shifting in the breeze. My headlamp flickers. I switch off maglite and stand in near darkness, breathing shallow. Door creaks behind me. I spin, gun raised. The beam slices across a figure in the shadows. Tall, broad shoulders, outline indistinct. I step back, voice raw. "Show yourself." No answer. My finger rests on the trigger. I sweep again. The figure is gone. My pulse thunders. I press the back of my hand to my forehead. I can taste copper. I force myself to move. There's only one way out. Back down the stairs, through the barn door, and onto the road. Outside, backup will be waiting. I bend to pick up the police scanner. Static snaps to life, sirens mixed with wind. Then the scanner picks up a whisper. "Don't leave the circle, deputy." The words crawl under my skin. I stand, careful not to step on the prints circling the tools. I step out of the circle, into the beam of my headlamp. Snow drifts swirl inside, cold settling in my boots. The barn door groans as I push it open. Outside, the storm has whipped itself into a frenzy. I take a steadying breath and step onto the path of footprints heading back the way I came. With each step, the bloodied prints crunch under my boots. I head toward the trees, toward the road, and toward the still beating hope that I'm not alone in this horror. I step out of the barn and the wind nearly lifts me off my feet. Snow whips across my face, stinging wherever it finds an opening, around my collar, beneath my hood, across my cheeks. My headlamp illuminates the path, churned footprints that lead uphill toward the pines, then vanish into the storm. I force my legs to follow, one foot in front of the other, boots soggy and sloshing with icy melt. My revolver presses cold against my hip, and every nerve in my body screams to run back to the cruiser, to radio for help, to get out of this nightmare. But I can't. Not yet. The tally marks carved into that outbuilding, the photographs on the walls, the name MB scrawled in my own blood on the farmhouse plaster. None of it makes sense unless I finish walking this path. The wind roars in my ears as I crest the ridge. The storm's a wall of white, so thick I can hardly see the pines that surround me. I tighten my grip on the maglite, beam sweeping left and right. Branches shudder over me, needles rattling like distant gunfire. Snow piles in drifts that swallow my calf-high boots. My legs burn, my lungs ache, but I trudge on. There is an echo in this hollow, the sound of my own breathing magnified against the emptiness. Somewhere beneath that white blanket of snow lies all the answers, or more questions I don't want to ask. I round a bend in the trail and spot the cruiser's headlights, smeared yellow through the flakes. My beacon, my lifeline. I give a short, ragged whistle. The engine idles, warm glow inside. Promises of safety. But before I reach it, something catches my eye. Freshly broken branches at the tree line, just beyond my light's reach. They're snapped low, about my shoulder height, like someone leaned hard against them. I pause, heart thumping, and sweep the beam over the broken wood. No tracks lead away, just the broken branches, splayed like warning signs. I swallow and step closer, boot crunching against snow. I drop to one knee, level the beam at the break, and examine the bark. There are smudges, dirty, like someone grabbed the branch to steady themselves, leaving palm prints in thawed sap. I stand, glancing back toward the cruiser. Every instinct tells me to run, but it also tells me someone, or something, is watching. And if I flee without looking, I'll never know who. I tuck my chin into the blanket and press on through the timber. The trees close in overhead again, snow-laden limbs brushing my shoulders. I feel claustrophobic, the hush of the forest pressing in. My headlamp beam picks out two sets of footprints wandering between the trunks. One heavy set, one light. The light prints are small, child-sized. I halt and shine the light on them. They're fresh, cut sharply into the snow, then vanish against a fallen oak. I round the trunk and find them emerging on the other side, footsteps accompanied by a faint echo of something. Soft, like a laugh, but I can't be sure. My throat tightens. A laugh out here would mean company. I follow the prints a few yards, then the snow drifts too deep. I drop the maglite and kneel, pressing gloved fingers into the impressions, then inhaling the faint scent of pine and something metallic. I tug a finger across one print, the outline of tiny toes, heel too small, the arch too delicate. I press my ear to the ground, but the only sound is the wind tearing at branches and the distant hum of the heater in my cruiser. I rise and jog the last 50 yards, cramps twisting in my calves. The cruiser door is icy shut, but I yank it open and slip inside, closing the door against the wind. My booted feet thud on the driver's side mat as I drop to my knees to start the engine. The heater gurgles to life, blasting warm air at my face. I spray defrost, and the windshield clears in places. Relief floods me until I notice the rearview mirror. Hung from it by a single thread of wire is a Polaroid photograph. I blink, heart seizing. I hadn't seen it hanging there before. I swivel in my seat and reach for it. The photo is of me, Deputy Brooks, kneeling by Curtis Dane's body inside the barn, headlamp beam cutting through the gloom. I thought only my own scan of the barn wall had photos. But here it is, me dead center. Tape residue at the top where it was affixed and torn. The edges of the Polaroid are smeared with something dark. I press a fingertip to the smear. cold tingle on my skin. I can't make out the letters pressed there, but I know what they spell. Your turn. My heart pounds so hard I can taste it. I fumble with the door, simultaneously yanking the keys from the ignition. I fling the door open and step out into the storm again, abandoning the warmth, the safety, the backup I know is miles away. The Polaroid trembles in my hand. The wind tears at it, but I hold on. I shine my mag light back at the tree line. For a heartbeat, I think I see movement. A slender shape stepping just beyond the tree trunks, then dissolving behind a trunk. My skin crawls. I press the Polaroid to my chest, feeling its edges cut into the fabric of my uniform. The storm's howl seems to carry laughter this time, soft, high, distant, exactly like the memory of a child's giggle. I train the flashlight on the forest, heart hammering. I whisper so softly it's drowned by the wind, "I'm here, show yourself." The snow whips around me, and that faint giggle comes again, closer this time, right behind me. I whirl, but there's nothing. Only snow cloud and pine, no footprints in the fresh drifts. My chest tightens. I swing the maglite into the forest, but the beam catches only frozen white and black trunks. The wind carries the giggle once more, and I realize it's not childish at all. It's layered, echoing, unnatural. And then the Polaroid in my hand ripples, as though something has grazed it. I look down, and there on the surface new letters have appeared, scrawled invisible until now. Me next. I drop the photo and it snags adrift. I stare at it, mesmerized. Sirens crackle faintly in the distance, backup approaching, but too late. I feel a presence at my back, close enough to touch, knuckles brushing my coat. I tense, spinning again, maglite beam bouncing wildly, but nothing stands there in the whiteout. Only myself, alone, in the storm, and the photograph swirling away into the snow at my feet. I bend to retrieve it, boots slipping. I pick it up, frost seeping into my gloves. The picture is blank now, the image faded. I rub my thumb across the surface and feel ridges, tiny when you know what to look for. I look down at my hands, back at the tree line, heart pounding like a war drum. The world is silent but for the wind. I know I should run back to the cruiser, but fear pins me in place. Lightning flashes behind the clouds, and for a split second I see a figure standing at the edge of the trees, tall, still, its head tilted. Then the world goes dark. The sirens grow louder, and half buried in the snow I see the horn lights of approaching cruisers, red and blue cutting through the white storm. I raise my voice, raw with relief and terror, to call out, but it's swallowed by snow. I press the Polaroid to my chest, turn toward the beams of light, thinking rescue, when I realize the figure hasn't moved, hasn't disappeared. It watches, head cocked, the faintest hint of a smile on lips I can't see. Sirens roar, lights paint the snow red and blue, and I take a step backward. The figure lifts a gloved hand and waves, then steps forward into view, half hidden by swirling flakes. Deputy Collins, my partner, pale and silent. But his eyes are black holes, mouth curved upward in a grin that has no warmth. And as the cruisers skid to a halt behind me, I understand that me next wasn't about my daughter, or Curtis or Collins. It was about me. And now, here I stand, trapped between the storm and the thing I once called a partner, knowing that the worst is only just beginning.